Hey everybody, today we are going to be working on painting our outer space pictures. Now this is one of my favorite projects because making this cool texture paper that we use for the mountains and for the planets is really simple and really fun, and it's just so satisfying the way it looks. We'll also be learning about shading so that we can make these planets look like they're 3D. So this is just a fun project. Now, it is a very messy project, so you are going to want to wear at least an apron and probably a paint shirt to cover up all of your clothes because the paint can get everywhere. You'll also want something to protect the surface of whatever you're using, so whether newspapers or a little cheap plastic tablecloth, something, because there will be some paint splatters all over the place. All right, let's get started. Okay, so we've got our paint shirts on because we're going to be making a really big mess. And then what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to cover two papers in paint. We're going to do a black paper that we're going to cover with speckles of white paint. We're going to splatter paint with a toothbrush. And then we're going to cover a white paper in a whole bunch of different colors that are all swirled together so that we can make the textured paper that becomes the planets and the mountains. So we're going to first start with splatter painting the black, and I'm going to film Cricket in a close-up so that you can see closely how to do it. But what you need for that, is a toothbrush. You're going to dip the toothbrush into white paint, and then you're going to use your finger to make the paint spray out onto your paper. Now, if you start at the bottom of the bristles and you pull up, the paint's going to go out farther. If you start at the top and you go down, then the paint's going to go right under your brush. So you're going to probably want to try both directions to get the effect that you want. Okay, so Cricket just dipped their paintbrush into the white paint that they've got over here. All right, and now they're going to flick their brush. So they're starting at the top and dragging their thumb down, and you can do it either direction. Now they're going from the bottom and going up. So as you can see, some of the speckles are tiny, some of them are thicker, and that is great because stars are a lot of different distances. So some will look closer, so they'll look bigger, and some will look farther away, so they'll be tiny. Just get that whole black piece of paper covered in splatters of white paint. And when you feel like you've got enough stars for your background, you can call it quits. Now, some of you will find that you end up with some big blobs of white paint that you don't want. Don't worry about it because there are a couple of things we can do with those blobs. One is we can just cover them up with a planet, or we can turn it into part of the landscape. So don't worry too much if you're getting big blobs, but work on getting the smaller ones too, because we like the small speckles. All right, so now that the paint splatters are done for the stars, now we're going to work on the colorful piece of paper. So you're going to need a few things for this. You're going to need a spray bottle with water in it because you need to get your paper wet. If you don't have a spray bottle, you can use a wet sponge and use the wet sponge to get your paper wet. So however you want to do it. But you want to get your paper wet, not so soaked that it's going to tear, but you want it wet because we want the colors to smear around and mix together. You are also going to need paintbrushes and your paint, and you can use any kind of paintbrush, it doesn't matter, so whatever you've got. The last thing that you need, and this is the cool part, this is what makes it look different, is some kind of plastic wrap. Doesn't matter what brand, just some kind of plastic wrap. Because what we're going to do is we're going to spray the water all over the colored paper. Then we're going to smear it with paint all over, mixing colors into patches and stuff like that. And then we're going to tear off pieces of plastic wrap and lay them right on top of the paint and let it get all wrinkled up and squished up and everything, and that's all right. And then we're going to leave it that way to dry, and that's going to give it such a cool texture. Okay, Cricket is now going to cover their paper in water. So they're just going to spray it until it's pretty wet. right, that's probably good. And now just grab some paintbrushes and start painting some colors on there. You'll want to kind of think about what colors you want for your planets. If you know you want an orange planet, make sure you've got an orange spot on there. Now remember, we're not trying to paint a picture, we're just covering the whole paper in color. And we want lots of different colors in there, and we want them to mix together a little bit and blend in. So just go ahead and put as many colors on there as you want and let them mix together. You can just dip your dirty paintbrush into the next color because you're going to be mixing them all anyway. Although if you really want to make sure, you can clean your brush in between colors. That's okay too. Now, if your paint starts to get a little bit dry on the paper and you want to blend it some more, you can just spray the paint with water, and that helps it too. That will help it blend together. But you can use multiple brushes for the different colors. You can just kind of mix, let your colors mix, or you can clean your brush in between. All right, now Cricut is making sure that they fill in all the white patches. We don't really want any white to be showing. All right, so Cricut is done covering their paper with paint. So now they are going to film me doing the next step so you can see how to put the plastic wrap on. Okay, so the first step is going to be to spray it with more water. We want it pretty drippy. So I'm just going to cover this with water, and then we're going to do the plastic. Now I have found that it's easier, rather than trying to do a long one across here, it's easier to do two shorter ones side by side. So I'm going to rip off a piece and I'm going to lay it on here. Do the second piece and lay it on right here. Now, we want it to be wrinkly and bunched up, so I'm actually going to make it worse than it did on its own, and I'm going to kind of squish it around a little bit. Just a little section there, and that is fine because all it does is make a different texture. So you don't want to smush it too much, but you want to get a lot of wrinkles in there because that is going to dry and it's going to leave behind what looks like a rocky, bumpy surface. And that's it. Now all you have to do is let it dry. All right, so we flipped this over to let it dry because it'll dry faster if the plastic's underneath so that air can get to the paper. And now we get to do the cool part of pulling off the plastic and seeing what kind of cool texture we got. So you can just peel this off. And I'm gonna go in closer so you can see. It's so cool. I love all of those lines. They look like cracks and crevices in rock and the way the colors blend together. So our next step is going to be cutting out our planets and our mountains.